Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Naveed, and today I'm going to deliver the lecture on the topic Designing and Managing Services Process. Designing and managing services process has to do with that services are basically the intangible entities, and the processes has to be defined in a very clear way. We need to design it beforehand, as we know that marketing is all about uh, having a proactive approach rather than the reactive approach. So in this regard, we need to design and manage our service processes beforehand so that we can actually make things in a streamlined manner. So the learning objectives of this particular chapter are: we need to be familiar with what we can learn from flowcharting the service and know how flowcharts are drawn. We will tell the difference between flowcharting and blueprinting. These are the two tools through which we can actually differentiate between that what is a flowcharting, which is actually has to do with the processes, and blueprinting is the exact look of how the service would look like. We would be developing a blueprint for a service process with all the necessary elements in place, and we would be understanding how to use failure proofing to design fail points out of service process. First part is flow charting customer services process. What is basically the flow charting? Basically, I would be going through what is a service process basically. So if you are listening to me, it is just the preamble. We already know that, but you would be able to understand. From the customer's perspective, services are the experiences. We all know that services are the experiences. We can call a customer, contact center, or visiting a library. From the organization's perspective, services are the process that have to be designed and managed to create the desired customer experience. Customer is at one end who needs to get the experience, whereas the organization is at one end who needs to make the experience wonderful for the customer, whereas promised to the customer. This makes processes the architecture of services. Processes describe the method and sequence in which operating systems work and specify how they link together to create value proposition that has been promised to the customer. In high contact services, customers are the integral part of the operation and the process becomes their experience. This entire distinction between the operation and the process. Badly designed processes are likely to annoy customers because they often result in slow, frustrating, and poor quality service delivery. Poor processes makes it difficult for frontline employees to do their jobs well, result in low productivity, and increase the risk of service failures. So in the poor processes basically make it difficult for the frontline employees to do their jobs well, right? That results in the low productivity and increase in the risk of service failure. So we need to define the processes too well. Then there's a flow charting. Flow chart, you have already have heard the names of flow charting. Flow charting is a simple tool to document service processes. It's a technique for displaying the nature and sequence, the different steps involved in delivering service to the customers. It is exactly like that when you are developing a program for a computer system, a computer program for any kind of work, you need to jot it down into the flowchart. It offers an easy way to understand the totality of the customer's service experience. By flow charting, the sequence of encounters customers have with a service organization can gain valuable insights into the same nature of an existing service. And then you actually make the flow that who would report to whom and what should be coming first and what should be next done. Recognizing that a value proposition may embrace all or part of the whole cluster of benefits a firm offer to its target market. Service marketers need to create a coherent offering in which each element is compatible with the others and all are mutually reinforcing. Marketing find that creating a flowchart for a specific service is particularly useful for distinguishing between those steps at which customers use the core service and those who are involving service elements that supplement the core product. For instance, the restaurants, food and beverages constitutes the core product, the main product, but supplementary services may include reservations, valet parking, a courtroom, being escorted to a table, ordering from the menu, billing payment, and use of the restrooms. As we can, we can differentiate between the two sides of the flower of the petal. The flower of the service. If you prepare flow charts for a variety of services, you will soon notice that although the core products may differ widely, common supplementary elements from information, billing, and from reservation to order taking to problem resolution keep recurring. Flow charting will help you to understand how the nature of the customer's involvement with the service organization varies among each of the four categories of the service. What were the categories of the service? People processing, possession processing, mental stimulus, and information processing. This is the entire flow charting. As we can see, the people processing stay at motel. The entire thing that we need to know, this is for the organization to understand that how will it going to make people understand. People processing stay at motel. Park the car, you check in, you'd actually make it that how the flow would be going on. The people will come, they will park the car, they will check in, they will spend night in the room. In the morning, they'll have breakfast and they will check out, right? Then there's a possession processing, repair a DVD player, right? So this is how travel to the store, technicians examine player diagnosis, they leave the store, they return pick up player, and then later DVDs at home. And see, this is how the flow goes on. And if you have made the flow, it would be very easy to take the part and to have a streamlined approach towards the carrying forward of the entire service. Then there's a mental stimulus processing, weather forecast. You collect the weather data, meteorologist inputs data to models and create forecasts from input. They view the presentation of the weather forecast. And if you see above, we turn on the TV, we select the channel, we view the presentation of the weather forecast, and we confirm the plans for the picnic and where it is coming from. The meteorologist department collect weather data, meteorologist inputs the data to model and create, and then view the presentation of the weather. Then we have learn about the options for information processing. We learn about the options, we select plans, complete forms, we pay, insurance coverages, and printed policies. And this is how the entire flow charting would go. After this, we have a next thing. I hope that the flow charting is clear to you all. Now I'm going to discuss with you people what is blueprinting services to create valued experiences and productive operations. A key tool we use to design new services or redesign existing ones is known as blueprinting. We design the new services. It is a more sophisticated version of flow charting. A flowchart describes an existing process, often in fairly simple form. A blueprinting specifies in detail how a service process should be constructed and includes details as to what is visible to the customers and where they are potentially having the fail points in the service process, which we can actually proactively see in the blueprinting and we can rectify it beforehand. It is no easy task to create service, especially one that must be delivered in real time with customers present in the service factory. Service factory is that place where you are actually giving the service. To design services that are both satisfying for the customers and operationally efficient, marketers and operations specialists need to work together. Blueprint can provide a common perspective and language to the various departments involved. Blueprints can provide a common perspective and language to the various departments involved. Blueprints show that what the product should look like and detail the specification to which it should conform. In contrast to the physical architecture of building or piece of equipment, service processes have a largely intangible structure. In contrast to the physical architecture of a building, you have to create a blueprint of of the manufacturing products or a building. It is an entire look of the organization. In the architecture firms, they create the blueprints of the buildings to see what a building would be looking like after it is constructed. So in contrast to the physical architecture of a building or piece of equipment, service processes have a largely intangible structure that makes them all the more difficult to visualize. How we develop a blueprint. How should you get started on developing a service blueprint? First, you need to identify all the key activities which are involved in creating and delivering the service in question, and then specify the linkages between these activities. A key characteristic of service blueprinting is that it distinguishes between what customers experience at the front stage and the activities of employees and support processes at the backstage where customers can't see them. And this is what is making the services not very seriously taken by the customers. And between these two lies what is called the line of visibility. Between the two, we know that it calls the lines of visibility. Operationally oriented businesses are sometimes so focused on managing backstage activities that they neglect customers purely at the front end perspective, where we have to keep it very balanced at every end. Accounting firms, for instance, often have elaborately documented procedures and standards for how to conduct an audit, but may lack clear standards for hosting a meeting with clients or how staff members should answer the telephone. Service blueprints clarify the interactions between customers and employees and how these are supported by backstage activities and systems. By clarifying the interrelationships among employees, roles, operational processes, information technology, and customer interactions, blueprints can facilitate the integration of marketing, operations, and human resource management within a firm, because everybody will get a right idea that what is to be provided to the customer and how it is going to be provided to the customer. Blueprinting also gives the managers the opportunity to identify potential fail points, which is also the part, it is entirely a management part where you need to rectify where your service is not like can fail, or that's the point, which is the weaker point. Where there's a significant risk of things going wrong and diminishing service quality. When managers are aware of these fail points, they are better able to take preventive measures, as I told you. They can also pinpoint stages in the process at which customers commonly have to wait, and then they can actually rectify the entire process. Armed with this knowledge, marketing and operational specialists can then develop standards for execution of each activity, including times for completion of a task. Maximum customers wait times in between task and script and role definition. What is a script? What is being done, and role is somehow what you have to perform to guide interactions between staff members and the customers. Let's take an example of a blueprinting the restaurant experience, a 3-act performance. From this perspective. Now see, to illustrate the blueprinting of a high contact people processing service can be done. We can examine, you can see in the book as well, in the reading materials that I have uploaded, that we will examine the dinner experience for the two, an upscale high-graded restaurant that enhance its core food service with a variety of other supplementary services. A rule of thumb in the full service restaurant is that the cost of purchasing the food ingredients represent about 20 to 30% of the price of the meal. What you are buying is 20 to 30% of the meal. The balance can be seen as the fees that the customers are willing to pay for renting a good table and a chair and in a pleasant setting, ambience, that's what we call. The service of food preparation experts and their kitchen equipment and serving staff to wait on them in the dining room. So this is what we are paying for. The key components of the blueprinting, reading from top to bottom, are In that regard, we need to see the I would be going through the pre-process stage. Most services process can be divided into three main steps, like pre-process stage, where the preliminaries occur, such as making a reservation, parking a car, getting seated, and being presented with a menu. In process stages where the main purpose of the service encounter is accomplished, such as enjoying the food and drinks in the restaurant. And then the post purchase stage where the activities necessary for the closing of the encounter happens, such as getting the check and paying for the dinner. It is important to differentiate these stages as customers tend to have different objectives and sensitivities in these stages. For example, research in the context of restaurants found that people are more upset about a delay during the pre-process or post-process stages than in the in-process stages, because in the pre-stage they are into the activity of making reservation, and post-stage are something that they have gone through that. The pre and post process stages typically are not the core of the service, and the customers want efficiency and convenience in those stages. Convenient way to get a reservation and getting the check and payment done quickly when one wants to leave the restaurant, whereas the in-process stage has to deliver the core benefits of the service. The key components of the blueprint, reading from the top to bottom, let's see. Number one, definition of the standard for the front for each front stage activity. Only a few examples are actually specified. I will be uploading the thing that you make a reservation, that you actually what happens, that you response time for a script for taking reservation, you make a reservation, you park a car, and stuff like that. Number two, physical and other evidence for physical activity specified for all steps. Three, principal customer actions, line of interaction. What is the line of interaction? That how are you going to interact? Front stage actions by customer contact personas, line of visibility. Backstage actions by customer contact personas. We support process involving other service personas and support processes involving information technology. And I would be giving you entire picture of the blueprinting over here. Then we can identify the fail points. What are the fail points of the entire service? Fail points are also very important to be added. Running the restaurant is a very complex kind of a business, and much can go wrong. A good blueprint should draw attention to the points in service delivery where things are particularly at risk of going wrong. From a customer's perspective, the most serious fail points marked in our blueprint are those that will result in failure to access or enjoy the core products. Service delivery takes place over time. There is also the possibility of delays between specific actions and requiring the customers to wait. And this is something where we can actually see. Example is the banking area, where people keep on waiting for a longer period of time. They do need to check how to, fix the customers in one way or another. So they involve items such as reservation, that could the customer get through by phone, was the table available as the desired time and date, was the reservation recorded accurately, and seating, was the table available when promised. These are the questions that you need to ask. From a customer's perspective, the most serious fail points marked in our blueprint are those that will result in failure to access or enjoy the core products. Service delivery takes place over time, and there is also the possibility of delays between the specific actions which are requiring the customers to wait. Then we have common locations for such waits are identified on the blueprints. Excessive waits will annoy the customer. We all know that. We have seen it in the banks while paying the bills and stuff. In practice, every step in the process, both front stage and backstage, has some potential for failures and delays. In fact, failures often lead directly to delays, reflecting orders that were never passed on or time spent correcting mistakes. Failure proofing to design fail points out of the service processes. Once fail points have identified, careful analysis of the reasons for failure in service processes is necessary. This analysis often reveals the opportunity for failure proofing certain activities in order to reduce or even eliminate the risk of error. Then we need to set service standards and the targets. through both formal research and on the experience, on the job experience, service managers can learn the nature of the customer expectations at each step in the process. Service providers should design standards for each step sufficiently high to satisfy and even delight the customers. If that's not possible, then they will need to modify customers' expectations. These standards might include time parameters, the script for technically correct performances, and prescriptions for appropriate style and demeanor of the entire service. As the axiom goes, what is not measured is not managed. The things that you cannot measure, you cannot manage them. So you need to have an objective approach. And that is why the flow charting and blueprinting techniques work really well, because it gives you the entire picture proactively. The standards must be expressed in ways that permit objective measurement. The process of the performance need to be monitored against standards, and compliance the targets need to be determined. The service blueprint combined with discussions with customers and frontline employees help to determine the service quality, attributes, and important to customers at each touch points. These aspects that require the attention of management should be basis for setting the standards. Important service quality attributes can be operationalized via service quality indicators and create a basis for monitoring process of the performance. For example, the attribute responsiveness can be operationalized based on customer interviews as processing time to approve a loan application. And service standards are then based on customers' expectations moderated by policy decisions about how to meet these standards and needs cost effectively. In cases where standards deviate from customer needs, expectations that need to be managed, application approval times can be communicated in brochures and application forms. The distinction between the standards and performance targets is important because of their subsequent use in evaluating the staff, branch, and a team performance. This makes the setting of standards and targets highly political. There's a distinction between, if there's a distinction between standard and the performance targets is important because of this subsequently, whatever the target is, performance has to be accordingly. By separating standards and targets, the firm can be hard about reflecting customer expectations in the performance standards, making sure that what customers expect is captured in the standards, but realistic about what the team actually can deliver. This separation of standards and targets can be important for three reasons. Number one, it would correct the standards which are internalized by the organization. The second, when implemented well, process owners and department or branch managers can raise performance targets gradually over time to bring them more in line with the customer expectations. And thirdly, it facilitates buy-in and support for the service standards by providing latitude to management and the staff. Ideally, service firms should try to provide consistently high performance at each step. In reality, however, many service performance are inconsistent, and therefore it is particularly important to start and finish very strong, because that would be the only way, the way we are going to help the service people to do their best of the job. Now, I will be just summarizing whatever we have done in this particular topic, and I hope that you people would be able to understand that in a very fine way. So in one way or another, what we have done is, from the customer's perspective, services are the experiences. For the organization perspective, services are the processes. Flow charting is the technique that we actually draw to understand the sequence of the different steps in delivering a service to the customer. And it is a simple way to visualize the total customer service experience. And the blueprinting is more complex form of the flow charting, but it gives the entire picture and also tells you about the failure points as well, so that we can rectify them very, very conveniently. A blueprinting basically involves the front stage activities, the physical evidence, the line of visibility, the backstage activities, support processes, the fail points, and the service standards and the targets. Good blueprinting A good blueprinting identifies fail points where things can go wrong. Fail-safe methods, also called Pokayokes, can then be designed to prevent. We need to collect information on most common fail points and then identify the root causes of those failures as well. And then we can create the strategies to prevent the failures. Service blueprints helps to set service standards that should be high enough to satisfy the customers. As standard needs to be measurable, important, but subjective or intangible services, attributes need to be operationalized as well, because without operations, we cannot make it happen. This makes my end to this particular topic. I hope that you have understood, and I'm going to conduct the interactive session for this, and you'll be able to understand it much better way. Till that time, thank you very much, and Allah Hafiz.